Alrighty, so this year the fourth and final John Wick movie has released into theaters, and now it's on Blu-ray because I have it right here, and I have had a chance to see it. And so today I'm going to do my ranking of all 4 John Wick films. Before I do that, please make sure to subscribe, hit the like button, hit the bell, and comment down below what is your ranking of the 4 John Wick films. What do you feel about this franchise as a whole? Is it one of your favorite action franchises? Do you love the action, or are you like me and you think it's a good franchise, but you have a lot of issues with it? I want to know all that down below and more. And with that said, here's my backstory with the John Wick franchise. For me, I never grew up watching these movies. When the first one was released, it was in 2014. I was about 10, and too young to even watch those movies. It wasn't until this year to where I even started to show interest in it for John Wick Chapter 4. So I bought the John Wick 3 DVD set, which is right there, binged all 3 movies, and I liked them enough. They weren't my favorite John Wick action movies of all time, but they were good enough, and I liked them enough. But this movie right here was one of my most anticipated action movies of the year because the action obviously was great, and that was absolutely great action. And if you have great action, of course, I'm going to love it. But it's time for me to rank them. And with that said, 4th place is going to Chapter 1. And I know. I'm going to get absolutely cooked for this. I'm pretty sure if you're watching this video, you're down below in the comment section typing, am I crazy? The thing is, this is just the one that's the least enjoyable for me. The first 2 acts feel like just kind of like a mediocre story-wise. It's very basic. A guy goes off to kill people because he wants revenge. It's very basic. And sure, the action is cool, but the majority of that action is just people shooting at each other from a distance. It's not even just stylized, cool, hand-to-hand fight combat like 2, 3, and 4 were. It mainly was just like people shooting at each other, and it was cool to see. It was nowhere near the level of the other films, but the story is just basic from that on. And then we get to the 3rd act. I just completely lost interest in it. The final battle of this is John Wick battling an old man, and they get into a huge fight, and that's the movie. And the fight choreography is great in the ending, but at that point, it was just like, this is just an incredibly basic story with John Wick going to kill people. That's what this was. It doesn't have any of the massive world building, even though it introduced some of that. It doesn't have any of the massive world building that 2, 3, and 4 have. It doesn't have any of the sparkly characters that 2, 3, and 4 have. It's not even any of that enjoyable like 2, 3, and 4 were. And even though I do have some positives, the positives are really low compared to the negatives. And the thing is, it's very disappointing because I heard this movie was great, and I walked into this one thinking that it was just a mediocre action flick. And thing is, it's weird because everybody else says this is the one with the biggest story, the biggest action, and I was like, what? I just never really saw, compared to 2, and 3, and 4, where in 2 we have big action sequences, and 3 we have big action sequences, and 4, I mean, the whole final battle is ginormous. To have this one, it just feels underwhelming compared to the rest of the franchise. That's why it's in last place. I had positives, just the negatives really outweighed that one. 3rd place, we got John Wick Chapter 3, and this one is on the same level as 4 for me. I think they're both pretty good movies. I would even consider saying they're kind of great, but I did have big problems with this one and 4. And this one, honestly, I think I would say the biggest problem is that the story is just really, really weird. Instead of being like a solid action flick where exactly what you would expect from a John Wick movie, we go spend about a half hour in the desert where John Wick gets his finger cut off and decides that he's going to kill his friend so he can get away from the table. He goes to the desert for a good half hour. Instead of being the John Wick stuff, fight action sequences, we get a desert sequence, which is just really, really weird, and it does not fit in this franchise at all. On top of that, we got these ninjas that team up with the girl that gets the revenge on the people that helped John Wick when he was in, he was excommunicado. And these ninjas just walk up here and they start stabbing people, and it's just like ninjas just coming here. Ninjas in John Wick. It's really weird, and it really just does not fit. And the story is just kind of all over the place and wonky. And by the end of it, we don't even really move anywhere. John Wick's still on the run from the Continental. This is the same kind of movie that just feels like we're at the same place, and we're just there for John Wick to do some killing and fun. But it's enjoyable. It's entertaining. It is very entertaining because we get the action sequences where John Wick in the beginning is in a library, is in a horse stable, and they're using all of these objects around him to his advantage. So like in the library, he takes a book, he shoves it in a guy's mouth, and he just punches it over and over again, and you could feel the impact, and that is absolutely awesome. And then in the horse stable, like literally he's using the horses to his advantage. He's slapping them, they're kicking back and kicking guys, and it's brutal, and it's absolutely incredible to watch. And then there's sequences on more ninjas on motorcycles. I mean, what more can you want from the action? The action is absolutely phenomenal and entertaining, and that's why this is so high. And even like the sequence with Halle Berry and John Wick in the place where the dogs are doing, that sequence is absolutely incredible. And that's why this movie I do really enjoy. But the story is some of the worst storytelling that I have seen in the John Wick franchise. I mean, number one, it doesn't move anywhere. The plot does not progress whatsoever. And then number two, I mean, just some weird decisions. The writing seems like they just wanted to focus on action sequences, and then the actual other writers were like, no, we want to do this big other story. It just feels out of place and awkward within the John Wick franchise. However, action, great. Cast, great. You gotta love it just like that. Second place, and kind of on the same levels as Chapter 3, John Wick 4. And John Wick 4 is great for a numerous number of reasons. Like I said with 3, the action is absolutely incredible. The action looks great, it feels great, it's violent. In the beginning, we get this whole sequence in the Japan Continental where they're in there, and it's just a whole half-hour long sequence of ninjas fighting gunmen and soldiers, and it's really fun and really incredible, and you feel the weight. And then in the ending, we get a whole sequence where John Wick is on the run from pretty much everybody as he kills people in the cars, and he runs through cars, and he goes through a building, and he's shooting rockets at people, and that's from overhead, and the cinematography is great. And then even the very ending where he does that gunfight with Donnie Yen, it's intense because you're in here, and even though Donnie Yen is clearly the villain, you still root for him because he's got a daughter, and you can feel that he's held on to by the high table. It has an oath to the high table, and he wants to get out for his daughter, and you can feel the weight, and you can feel the emotions in that. The thing is, the story in the middle just does not work at all. I mean, I think the decision to have them settle out as a duel, at the moment, and even in that specific place or time, is just weak and dumb, especially because it instantly goes from, yeah, I hate you, Winston, to, oh yeah, let me team up with you, Winston, to have a duel so we can get off the table. That's what it feels like to me. It feels lazy and just kind of a way to get us there. And even like the whole middle act, it does barely have any action, which is what I come to these movies for. The middle act's action sequence is not very good. I think it's cool how you get all these characters together, but then John Wick's fighting this big fat guy, and it just feels very odd. And I sat back and was like, this is really what this movie is. Fortunately, when we get to the third act, it turns from a whole new level with fantastic action. And even that ending is really emotional with where we leave John Wick off. Spoiler alert, he's dead. Yeah. Perfect timing. Get it? Because I said John Wick's dead and John Wick fell. You get it? He's dead. And we're left there with a good ending. And even though I found the way that he died just to be a bit odd, he's dead, and you feel the emotions because of that. And you feel what happens. And Alexander Skarsgård is a great villain. When he gets shot in the face by John Wick, you just feel that impact, and you loved it, and it was awesome. And then even like later on, all the new cast is great. Donnie Yen, Mr. Nobody, Alexander Skarsgård, they're all great here. And so there's so many positives, and even like the final post-credit scene left me wanting more. But all those positives do not make up for the second act, and I would say it's kind of miserable to watch because it wasn't entertaining, it wasn't fun. I found myself getting bored by the second. The story was exactly like Chapter 3, to where it's just very odd and does not fit in here. Fortunately, in the first act and the third act, it's saved because of the great action, which is what we come to these movies for. This one, however, does not have a good middle act. And without a good middle act, it's kind of like number 3. where number 3, I'd say the story's stronger, but the action is weaker. Where in number 4, the action is extravagant and high, and I loved where they left John Wick off. I'd say they're both the same. The stories in these movies are not that strong. The action is great, and that's what I come to the movie for, so it's a fun action movie. And I was left really positive because that final act was absolutely incredible. Just, you kind of needed to fix a lot in the middle act. Taking first place with a piece of cake is number 2, and I don't know, man. I just feel like this was a lot like number 1, but if number 1 had a great story, had great action, had a great villain, had all of that. From the very beginning, we're left off with a fantastic action sequence where John Wick steals his car back by wrecking it into all the other cars. Like, come on, man, that's awesome. That is just absolutely awesome to watch. And then, on from that, the next couple of hours are just John Wick teaming up with his friend, going there, and in a story that works in this franchise. It's just, he teams up with his friend to kill somebody because he's got a blood oath, and we're relying on these blood oaths and the backstory, and we get these unique characters, and we get the unique backstory of this whole world, and all that. That's where it actually starts. This is where it actually starts for me. The first movie was just a prologue of how John Wick got back in, and then the rest of the movie is where the franchise actually starts. And starts off with number 2, which is absolutely great, with great action, great story, and even like the ending of the film. You feel the weight, and you feel the emotions, and you feel of what John Wick does. And even like the final action sequence. I never once felt bored during it. I think it's fresh, I think it's original, and I think the story and how we're gathered back into John Wick's time and John Wick's universe is absolutely great. This is the only movie that I would say is really, really great in this entire franchise. The other movies have story problems. This is where the writing was great, the story was great, the action was great, and that's everything you want from a John Wick movie. Even like when every assassin goes after him, I think it's absolutely fun to watch that big action sequence. I don't even really have that big of a problem with this movie. There's no problems with this movie whatsoever because it just explores all that past with great action, and that's why number 2 is number 1. Like I said, I'm getting cooked. A lot of people have number 2 in last place and number 1 in first. I don't know why. I genuinely think we might be watching different movies. It's really weird, but I think 2 is great. 1 is okay. In the middle 2, they were good movies, but like I said, tell me down below, what is your guys' ranking of the John Wick franchise? What's your opinions on them? I want to know all of that down below and more. I have a review of The Flash, and I'm going to combine that with my Dial of Destiny review because I'm seeing that in about an hour and a half. I don't know. But I'm just so excited to do that review. Then I'll have a DCEU ranking, a Transformers ranking, an Indiana Jones ranking. I have so many videos coming up. Barry Season 4 review, Barry Season's ranking, Breaking Bad Season 4 review. Yeah, it's going nuts. I have a lot of videos coming up. But thank you guys for clicking on this one. And with that said, subscribe, join the Nerd Army.